Hey guys, Solid here and welcome back to another episode of Adventure News where we talk the latest, the greatest and sometimes the hated adventure and dual sport stories. And Honda have just confirmed that they're releasing the CRF300L and the CRF300 Rally in Europe and Australia. So that's big news, but we do have some major differences between the Western market version and the version they released in Thailand. Some are good and some are bad. Let's get into it. So if you've been living under a rock, Honda released the CRF300L and the CRF300 Rally as an updated version of their 250 in Thailand. And of course, most of us dual sporters who love the little 250 dual sports, our minds exploded with the possibilities. Although I was a bit disappointed that it wasn't a 350, but I will take a 300 as it is still an upgrade in my eyes. But the big news is that they've released it in Europe and they're releasing it in Australia as of March 2021. So that's not too far away and very exciting news. Again, I wanted to repeat that Europe is getting this and Australia just has been announced a couple of hours ago. There's no news yet on whether America is getting this, but I'd say it's a pretty sure thing. It's just probably something about the time differences and the announcements. I wouldn't be surprised to see America be announced in the next couple of days. There are also some key differences between the Western model and the model that's available in Asia. So I wanted to talk through those differences because there are some changes that are good and there are some changes that I don't like so much. So let's get into the good and the bad. So the first thing that jumps out to me is that in Australia and the UK, they're saying 27 horsepower, whereas in Thailand, they said 31 horsepower. Now, what's got me thinking here is that the most likely outcome with these two power differences is that in Thailand, they're telling us at the crank or the engine horsepower, and for the Australian and the European markets, they're stating the horsepower at the wheel. At least that's what I hope it is, because if it's 27 horsepower, and that's at the engine and we're going to lose some once it reaches the wheel, that is a little disappointing, but I'd be very surprised. The sensible part of me thinks that it's probably 27 horsepower out the wheel, which is fairly respectable. The other thing is the torque. We're getting 26.6 Newton meters of torque at 6,500 RPM. So to put that in perspective, the WR250R makes about 3 Newton meters less. It comes a lot closer in the rev range on the CRF300L. So if you'd like a torquey bike, I think this is probably going to suit you quite well, as it's going to be a little tractor by the looks of those power figures. The other big mystery with the 300L in Thailand was the ground clearance. It was quoted at 9.8 inches or somewhere around the 200 millimeters. Now, the European and Australian model has been stated at 285 millimeters or 11.2 inches. So that's much, much better. And it's actually 5 millimeters taller than the outgoing model. So it's actually increased in ground clearance, bringing it closer to the WR250R in ground clearance. So that's fantastic that it's actually got more ground clearance than the outgoing model. So we can all breathe a sigh of relief that this does indeed have better ground clearance than we were anticipating. The other thing that's different from the Thailand model and the European model is the stating of the weight. In Thailand, they said it was 138 or 139 kilos, depending on which source you used, and they didn't state whether that was dry or wet. Now here, for the UK and the Australian model, all the journalists are stating that the bike has dropped 4 kilos over the outgoing 250 model. So they're quoting the curb weight at 142 kilos with the fluids in it. Now, I'm not sure whether curb weight includes the maximum amount of fuel or just some fuel in it to allow it to run. The jury's still out there, but the fact that it is 4 kilos lighter over the outgoing model is good to see. I suspect that you could probably save a butt ton of weight by swapping out the exhaust and chucking in a lithium battery as well. But I really would have liked to have seen a little more weight drop than that. I know they had to work hard to get just that weight off, but I would have loved to have seen about the 135, 136 kilos, but I will take 4 kilos off. The seat height is at 880 millimeters, so I'm not sure. That might be a few millimeters taller than the old 250 model. I can't quite remember off the top of my head. some of you viewers will be able to correct me down below. So some other changes that are quite notable is that the gearbox, the ratios are now shorter for the gears 1 to 5, and the 6th gear is now more of an overdrive gear for freeway riding. So that's quite good. One of the things that had to be done to the 250L if you were thinking about off-road riding seriously was you would have to drop down the gear ratios. It does indeed come with a slip assist clutch, which Honda are claiming will require 20% less effort on our part. The 300L now features a 7.8 litre tank, which is actually slimmer, as well as the seat, which is also slimmer, so it should be easier to grip the bike, at least that is the theory. The riding position has also been changed a little bit. The handlebars have been pulled back, the foot pegs have been lowered a bit and moved rearward. So that's interesting. It should fit slightly taller riders there as well, so that's good news. The big news with the Rally really is the increased size in the petrol tank. It grows by 2.7 litres out to 12.8 litres, but we already knew that. So those are the positive changes. We've got that increase in ground clearance and we've got that confirmation of the weight. We're saving 4 kilos over the outgoing model. But there are some changes that aren't so great. So let's move into what I don't like about the Western model. So the changes with the Western model that you might not notice if you've just got excited and you've had a quick glance is that we actually keep the headlight design of the outgoing 250. Now there's nothing particularly wrong with it, it's just a bit boring and a bit bland. And to be honest, it's 2021. LEDs are the way we're going and the design aesthetic has changed. And I really liked the design aesthetic of the version that's available in Thailand with the LED headlight that looks like it's pretty much off the CRF300 RL. We don't actually get that sharp looking 300L that Thailand do. We get the boring old headlight and it just looks silly to me that we're getting such an outdated design. Now it's not a deal breaker. I'm sure you might be able to even get that headlight off the parts section and get your dealership to fit it if you really were determined to waste money for not much reason. But it is just disappointing to see Honda not back the technology here, as LED lights are lighter in setup, generally speaking, as compared to the old globe setup. So I really would have liked to see that commitment to the update in new aesthetics, globally speaking, rather than just giving the Asian market the fancy looking bike. Maybe it's just a faux pas on Honda's side, and once they arrive on our shores, they will be the updated version with the LED headlight. But it is a bit disappointing as it just does look a little bit boring to me and a little bit outdated. So the other thing that's changed for the worse, in my opinion, are the indicators. They are still LEDs, but they've changed the shape. And it just looks a little more old school, not quite as sharp and as cool if you're asking me. I definitely preferred the look of both the indicators and the headlight on the Thailand model as opposed to what we're getting in Europe and Australia. They are still LEDs and they are just indicators at the end of the day, so it's not a big deal, but it just would have been nice to see Honda put some effort into the aesthetics. But I'm sure they've got their reasons. Maybe it's compliance and the silly laws that we have in our Western markets. Who really knows? I'm still kind of hoping that this is a mistake and Honda will actually confirm that we're all getting the refreshed design for the 300. The rest of the specifications are basically identical to each other with Thailand and the European model. So I'm not going to go through all of those. I wanted to keep this video short and sweet. But let me know, are you looking forward to this bike? I don't think it's going to be the greatest bike of all time straight off the showroom floor, but I think that this bike will have a lot of potential once you put some capable suspension, an exhaust, a fuel programmer, and all the other nice little bits that we love to do to these bikes, and maybe a bigger tank. This will make a fantastic light adventure bike. I'm certainly looking forward to throwing my leg over one, but I'd like to know what you think. Are you looking forward to this, or are you just wishing that they made a 350 instead? And that's about it for this video. Thanks for sticking with me to the end, guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, guys, don't forget to stay shiny side up, and I'll catch you in the next video. See you later.